Hello, welcome to Friday Leadership Deep Dive. My name is Monica Vegalam, and I'm an executive coach. Today, we are talking about decision making. So, in the last live video that I did last Friday, I started with a decision making series intro, and we talked about the default approaches to decision making and how those don't lead to the most objective decisions. Today, I want to talk about an important distinction in how decision making goes for most people, the distinction between story versus facts. It seems like so simple and such a common sense kind of a thing to know, but then when we actually apply it to our decision making, it turns out we almost always take decisions from our internal stories rather than facts. So I'll spend some time today talking about this, and we'll start off with a little bit of a summary about what I spoke about last week. So I said that it's not always possible to take rational decisions because almost all decisions are emotional. There is some literature about this, and even thinking about the author. It's not Dale Carnegie. The author who wrote Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman. Yes, that's right. Daniel Goleman also wrote extensively about this, that almost all of our decisions are emotional. There is no other way about it. But it is possible to make objective decisions. There is like a little wiggle room, and that can happen with ontological inquiry, as in we inquire into the structures in our mind and how decision making always goes for us, our relationship to decision making. So another thing that I talked about last week was that there is always an assumption, unconscious assumption, that if I make this particular type of decision, or if I decide this way about it, I'm going to be happy or peaceful or whatever that is that we are looking for a future experience. And considering, we almost never consider that that's our underlying assumption. So it's important to take into account the experience we want to have with that decision, along with the content of the decision, as in okay, if I quit my job, um, like, okay, the content of the decision is quit my job, yes or no, and the experience that I want to have by deciding, making a decision about this particular thing. So today, uh, okay, before I move on to today's distinction, the default approaches people take are, there is a pros and cons list, cost benefit analysis. A lot of people go with like their gut feelings, and most common thing is also seeking advice from experts, mentors, or friends, um, or a little bit of an advanced level is studying about unconscious and cognitive biases and trying to apply them into decisions. You will find this being done by a lot of leaders. Now, this is all fine, nothing wrong with any of that, but it doesn't account the experience that we are talking about, and it doesn't account for the stories that we have in our mind. So, to take truly objective decisions, we need to look at four parts of what goes on. One is we need to be objectively removed from our desires and take a look at them. When I say objectively removed, I mean just like get some altitude. And then our fears, our emotions, and our frames of thinking. talked about this last time, so I won't go much deeper into that today. But what I'll talk about is this distinction called story versus fact. So I remember one of my teachers, when I was learning self inquiry from her, there is this powerful way that she talked about it, where she said that all that happens is that X happened, Y happened, and then Z happened. And then comes on the mind and tries to make meaning out of all of those events, and then try to project that as reality. So that's kind of how our minds work. That means that we make a story about um, completely meaningless events. As in, um, one of the books I'm actually reading right now is this book called Speaking Being. So, one example in this is, um, if it rains because uh, it rains to sustain life on earth. That's kind of the meaning that we make out of rain. But actually, there is no meaning to rain. It just rains. Rain doesn't decide that I'm raining today because I want life to sustain life on earth. No. Similarly, my boss my boss came and told me about how I'm playing games and gave me some really critical feedback and whatever. And then we make a story out of that. Like, it goes two ways, right? First one is, my boss is a jerk. He shouldn't think all of what he's thinking. So he's not in his right mind, or maybe he had a fight with his wife and he came and shouted that on me. Like, people rationalize like that. That's one way people take that kind of conversation. And second is, oh, there must be something really wrong with me and I need to improve. So either like something is wrong with them or something is wrong with me. Our unconscious really grabs on to either one of these stories, and sometimes maybe both, and then makes it like so meaningful for us that we need to prove something to the boss, that there is in fact nothing wrong, and or he's giving me some really critical feedback that I need to act on. I need to repair my relationship immediately with him. And like, you might take whatever actions from that meaning that we made. But often it's just a story. The fact is that there was a one on one meeting. The boss came and made some statements. He looked intense, maybe. And that's it. Like, those are the facts. But then our meaning like hooks us and makes us take some actions and has us make some decisions that may or may not be useful for us. So meaning is not bad, not wrong. It's just that when it is unexamined, it doesn't result in great decisions. We need to kind of see, okay, what am I making this mean about me, and how is this influencing my decision making? So that's kind of like the overview of story versus facts. What I want to do is read out this passage in this book, which explains this so beautifully. So this book, Speaking Being, I cannot lift it. It's so big. This is the one I am talking about, and this is from this guy called Werner Erhard, who was, I think, pretty popular in the 90s or 80s. And he started this workshop series, The Forum. And then that went on to create a set of coaching techniques where we bring the people back into facts and and examine the meaning people are making out of whatever is happening, so that they can move towards their goals and take more objective decisions and actions. That's kind of like my understanding, but the way the language they use is a little bit different, in the sense that they talk about who are you being about this, and I am equating who are you being with what am I making this mean, as in what story am I creating about a set of actions that happened, events that happened. So let me read this. um, so there are two here in this book. Werner Erhard talks about two uh, distinctions or two realities that we need to see objectively, as in, one is the story, one is what happened. When I say two realities, these two are not sorry, these two exist independently of each other. So a story that I make about how my boss is such a jerk is exists independently of the fact that he just made certain statements with certain intensity. So here is a passage here. Okay, what's disempowering is not the story. What's disempowering is when you collapse what happened with the story, and you can't distinguish the story from what happened. You can't distinguish because you've got this mush, this mess, this swamp of what happened and the story mixed together. The two need to be distinct. What does distinct mean? It means existing then on their own, being there of themselves. So they are two distinct realms of existence. Sometimes the story is appropriate, sometimes what happened is appropriate. What's never appropriate is when these two distinctions get collapsed. And then he gives an example of somebody coming late into a meeting or wherever. So I am late is what happened, the fact. And then everything that comes after I am late is a story. So I am late because I woke up late and my I had to take my dog to the vet and whatever. Like there could be like a full story about it, like oh, I got stuck in traffic, I'm so sorry, I'm late. All of that is the story. Only what happens is I'm late. And when you walk into a meeting and your team member um, is late for, let's say, the third time, and then every time they give a story, you have to, as a leader, you have to see, you have to first have space and capacity to take, okay, this person is unaware that they're in a story and they are telling a story which is not really necessary, and then lead them to say that, okay, you're late, that's fine, next time just don't be late. Instead, what happens is like we form this impression that, oh, this is a person who is always late, unreliable, I cannot give him this particular project because they never deliver on time. Like that's all story, right? And then that influences the decision making. Instead, if we like stick to the facts and then lead from the facts and lead from what actually happened, the decision making can be really powerful and quite creative. Okay, so there is a little more here that I want to talk about. Confusing what happened with your story about it is like ordering steak and then mixing the steak with the menu. Most people think life is sour because they've been eating the menu for so long, they don't recognize reading the menu. So, another way to say this is that maybe more specific, not specific, more, another way to look at this is that you keep driving a car on a long road trip, and then you confuse yourself for the car, not, and you don't realize that you're the driver, and then if the car is out of fuel, you blame yourself. I think that kind of maybe matches this. But what I mean to say is that there is self blame and blame of others, and all of that is spinned from the story, or thinking that you are the menu, or thinking that my life always goes like this. I always keep forgetting fueling the car, and that's why I am an unreliable person, or this person always keeps showing up this way, so they are always like that. Like we form certain conclusions in our head, and then form a whole context, and then all our reactions and decisions come from that context. And then from there, we have this whole disempowered stance about life, that, oh, my life is always sour, and I never get what I want, or um, results won't happen, etc. So, just separating the two domains of existence in any area of your life will leave you with more power in that area. For this to work, try it on in your own life. This is not the truth. Try it on. If it works, good, not throw it away. So, that's kind of like how the author, or the person leading this, is treating and telling you to experiment with this. So I would invite you to do the same. Try it on. Think about like anything that happens, and then think about the story that you make out of it. And there are I often talk about stages of development, adult development as well. So one of the stories I'm reminded of is that there is this kid who is like a teenager who is visiting a therapist, and then this kid had to return. Let me try to remember the story, one second. So the kid is like an ex juvenile, and he's going to a therapist to as a protocol, or something. That's not the point. But basically what happens is that he steals a scooter from some place, and then uh, puts it back, and and comes to the therapist and says very proudly that, hey, I almost, like, I stole the bike, but then I put it back. I am really recovering. I'm really proud of myself. And the therapist asks him, how come, why did you put it back? What made you put it back? And then he says that, well, I put it back because if I don't, I'm going to go to jail again. So that's like the meaning he is making out of why it is not good to steal, right? That is his ability to understand the situation. That's, so you see what the problem with this is, right? The problem is he does not understand that it's not just about the law, it's not just about the consequences of his actions, but actually it's not a really good thing to steal a bike, even for the other person in general. It's a like, he's not considerate of other person's feelings, or what loss it could cause to somebody else. So what I'm trying to point here is the story that it's not just the story, it's the meaning making that we have of certain things to do, certain things to not do, and then that's where like our decision making arises from. So as we go about our lives, try to see what is the story that I am making out of other people's reactions. So for example, if my daughter is kind of like throwing a tantrum, I might make a story, I might actually interpret it as, oh my god, she always does this at the end of the school. What the hell, what do I do? Maybe I'm not a good mom, maybe I didn't do the right thing, etc., etc. Or I can start like thinking that toddlers are always like this, and go into this, like rationalize and write that off. Or I can think that, oh, what's really happening here? If I take an objective look and examine my story about what's happening, examine my own desires, emotions, fear, frames of thinking, uh, frame, and the story I'm making from all of these things, like how I'm stitching all of these together to make a statement or about them or about me, then I'll be able to act out of a choice, instead of, when I say choice, an empowered choice, instead of an unconscious decision that I'm making, that um, this is how I'm going to deal with her today. So that's kind of what I have about story versus fact. So try this on, try to distinguish the story that you have about whatever reactions other people have, or um, the stories you have formed already because of other people's behavior or your own behavior, and then see what is actually in the realm of what happened and what is in the realm of the story, as in what is my interpretation of what happened and what is the actual facts, what are the actual events. So if you're a person who kind of like doesn't clean their house a lot, or doesn't vacuum their house a lot, you might make up a story that I am this kind of a person. If you have if you have this tendency to be nervous or have social anxiety, you might make a story up about yourself that I'm an introvert. Yes, that's a story. It's not a fact. Like there is no place that it's written that you're an introvert. It's just a meaning you're making out of certain behaviors and tendencies, and you may not be in some places, and in some places you may be an introvert. Or so all of these mental abstractions that we have, and then the stitching together that goes on in our minds, that can be completely shifted once we start orienting ourselves towards the facts. It's not an easy thing, it's very hard, because the default for us is to just kind of stay in our story, justify it, and try to validate it all the time. And then we make decisions and then justify that decisions to keep our story alive. I don't have a great example for this at the moment, but this is a practice I would invite you to take on. Just observe, become aware of your reactions as you walk about. Just notice your reactions, other people's reactions, and what is the story from which those reactions and um, decisions are arriving from. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for hanging out, and I hope this was useful for you. If something landed for you, let me know. I'd love to hear what was useful, what you got out of this, and what is something you would like to hear from me more. And if any if you like to connect, I would love to talk more about this and see if I can support you in your decision making. I have some exciting collaborations coming on with other coaches in the next 2 weeks. I'll announce when I have some confirmations. So watch out for that. And that's all. Thank you so much and have a great weekend. Bye.